Hi everyone! So it's been 3 years since I started YouTube and this is my first time doing one of these videos. Today I just want to show you and talk through some art supply items that I've regret buying. That said, what doesn't work for me may work well for others. So I'm not saying that these products aren't good, they just don't work for me for what I wanted to use them for. Okay, shall we begin? The first one here is this Fabriano watercolor paper spiral pad. I'm not sure if there's a name for this particular range, but it's the one with 25% cotton content. I bought this one a long time ago when I wanted to upgrade my paper from completely cellulose to maybe working my way towards 100% cotton. This one was 3 times as expensive as cheap cellulose paper that I was previously using, but not as expensive as those 100% cotton paper, so I thought I'd try it. But turns out the 25% cotton really didn't make a difference. It feels like regular cellulose paper, and I felt like it was also heavily sized, which is a characteristic I don't particularly prefer. So I ended up just using this as an experimental swatch book of sorts. Next is this Talens Art Creation sketchbook. I love the soft pink cover, but the main reason I don't like this sketchbook is because the pages aren't white. It's one of those ivory white cream type of colors. I did a few test swatches with watercolor, and although it takes washes of watercolor well, I don't particularly like how watercolor behaves on the smooth surface. Having said that, I recently started using colored pencils in this, and it's been a joy. So perfect for dry media, but for watercolor, quite the regret. That's it for papers. This next one is a kneadable eraser I bought probably 2-3 years ago. I don't know if it's the brand or if it's because I live in a hot and humid climate, but it's always been extra sticky, which really put me off using it. So it's just been living in a drawer the past few years. Now it's like hard as a rock and has a sticky film all around. I much prefer erasers like Pentel's High Polymer Soft Eraser. This next one, as you can see, is a Swatch book. I didn't exactly buy this. This one is actually one of those photo albums that I used to put my swatch cards in. I wanted to mention this one because I really regret spending so much time into this. The more colors I accumulated, I'd have to rearrange everything, and it just wasn't something I particularly enjoyed, nor found very useful. So I eventually abandoned this whole thing. I find that the large swatches I make in sketchbooks are far more useful to me. So I wanted to mention this in case anyone is considering buying or putting together something like this. Next, a lot of you will probably recognize this one. You could easily get this empty rainbow palette from AliExpress. I got mine from Seamiart on Shopee. I've said this before in the past, but basically when I ordered it, I thought it would be colorful and vibrant, but in real life, it's not vibrant at all and even borderline quite muted. Some people have told me theirs is vibrant though, so it may be possible I got a defect or something, who knows? Next are these stamp-related items. This one here is one of those date stamps. At the time I got this, I saw lots of artists use it in their sketchbooks, and I really liked the aesthetic. But once I started using it in my own sketchbooks, I quickly realized it's not something I want to add onto my sketchbook pages. At least not at this time. And my ink pad with permanent waterproof ink also had lots of issues because it would dry out even in this airtight container. Which then makes me regret having made these 2 stamps because I don't use them anymore either, all because of the ink issue. As for watercolor paints, I'm perfectly fine with White Knight's full pan paints, but their tube paints I just can't. Don't get me wrong, the quality is fine, but again, I'm in a hot and humid climate, so they never dry. They stay rather sticky and gooey, and at best, they harden a bit, but are still rather sticky, and it could get really messy. I do have Sennelier and Magello that both contain honey as well, but I don't have as many problems with those brands. Moving on to brushes, these two Pro Art brushes didn't perform anything like I expected them to. I spoke about them in detail in my quill comparison video, so I'll link that in the description box below. Then there's this Seamiart travel brush. The bristles themselves are great, but the cap doesn't have a ventilation hole, so I end up never grabbing it to use it. Because if I do use it, let it dry, I can't close the cap. And if I use it, close the cap while still wet, I risk mold growing. So I guess I'll be adding this to my donation box. Then this Tintoretto travel brush. Again, it's a great brush, well built. However, the cap is noticeably heavy, so when I post the cap and use the brush, it's always top heavy, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I've posted videos of a lot of these items before, so if there's anything you want to hear or see more of, please refer to the description box below. This is the Master's Hand soap that I initially bought to use to clean my brushes. I spoke of my initial thought process in a past video, but since posting that, I've had several viewers warn me that these little specks in the soap act like scrubs, which could possibly ruin my brushes in the long run. So with that, I regret having bought this soap for that purpose, but it still works great getting stains off my hands, so I'm not just going to chuck this in the bin or anything. Moving on, fountain pens. I specifically regret buying screw cap fountain pens. I still have a few in my collection, but I do find that the screwing bothers me. I much prefer click or push caps a lot better. It's not a big issue, but if I were to go back in time, I definitely would avoid buying screw cap fountain pens. As for inks, I completely regret ever purchasing sheening inks. Don't get me wrong, I really love the look of them. Who doesn't? But then I didn't know at the time that I needed the right kind of paper for the sheen to show, which I did eventually get a small pack of, but papers that show sheen well are so hard to find here in Thailand or are ridiculously expensive, and I also don't journal often enough, so I decided not to pursue this aspect any further. Budgeting for watercolor paper is more than enough for me. Okay, we have 2 items left. I'm sure a lot of you know what this looks like. Yes, it looks similar to Art Toolkit's palettes. I really wanted one a couple years ago, but it was over my budget at the time, so I had put this one together myself from a business card holder I got from Daiso, and the pans I got from some emptied cosmetic palettes. The lined paper is there for now because the surface is like a mirror and reflects too much light. Anyway, I regret having put this together in the first place because I rarely grab to use it just because I'm not fond of the mixing space of this form of palette, especially when I like painting with wetter washes. Last but not least, this generic plastic palette that I'm sure most of us have had at one point or another. The reason I regret buying this one is because even though I've got some good use out of it, the format of the palette with wells on either side just never really sat right with me. I think I might be quite picky when it comes to palettes, considering even at present day, I still haven't found a palette that I'm 100% satisfied with. Anyway, those are all the items I have feelings of regret towards. I've also never done a favorites video, so if you're interested in seeing a video showing my favorite supplies thus far, do let me know down below. I'm not sure which one would be more useful, a my favorites video or a my most used supplies video. We shall see. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to drink lots of water and stay hydrated.